Hi, friends. Welcome back into the Serena Kingdom, and I'm really looking forward to chatting with you guys. Today, I have a special guest joining me, Salty Emerald. We're going to be going over some personal stories, some sensitive topics, family dynamics, self love, self growth. Some of these conversations might be a little bit deeper, darker, and maybe triggering for some of you guys. But this is our real, honest, deep feelings. So I hope you guys enjoy today's segment. And let's bring in Emerald.
So my name is Emerald, and I've been hanging out a lot around here whenever I can. I'm a busy bee. I'm about to be getting my bachelor's on the 7th of August, probably before this video's out, for my bachelor's in criminal justice, and I'm deciding to go down a career path while I continue to find a job in the criminal justice field. 2.5 hours away from here, so I'm starting a new chapter basically in life with my loving partner. So
I love that. And Emerald and I have been friends for about 4 years now,
yeah.
give or take some time. So being able to watch Emerald grow has been amazing. I kind of think of her as a little sister, and I think this was a really good time to get together and kind of say goodbye to each other,
Mm-hmm.
but maybe share some of our insights as I've had the opportunity to leave my house and I've been with my partner for 5 years now. So we're going to kind of go over how it is to leave your home and move out on your own and have your own responsibilities in life and all
Mm-hmm.
the struggles that comes with being a lovely adult.
Yeah.
So let's get into it. Starting off this segment, I thought it'd be good to go over personal stories so you guys get to know us just a little bit more, and then that will help segue throughout the whole rest of our conversations. So starting off with me, I came from a somewhat broken home. My mom was a single mom to five of us, and she did her best raising us. A lot of my issues stem from not having a dad in my life. I always thought he'd come around and be around. Some of you guys know that he was a drug addict. And I'm still coming to terms with him no longer being here. If you guys did not know, and trigger warning, he did pass away last August. And I spent a lot of my time, a lot of my childhood waiting for him to get clean and come around. And it's still like in my brain. I still think he's going to come around and be clean. And I have to come to terms with the fact that he's no longer here. So, just growing up with a lot of childhood trauma, and, I'm here now. And Emerald, do you want to share some of your personal story?
Oh yeah. Um, I came from a bit of a different background. A lot of my issues stemmed um towards the end of my teenage years a lot of the time, and there was a lot of the things in the younger parts of my life that I just didn't even realize until I was told. um so my father passed away whenever I was 17. um but he, on my end, he was my best friend. He was the one that I would go to for everything in life. I would come home, we would talk on the porch for hours on end, even after he had a 12-hour shift. I mean, I went to him about every single thing. It's going to be 5 years without him this August, actually, as well. Um, so there's a lot of grieving in that degree with me, with my mother, with my brothers, and how they decided to go about that and how they decided to distance themselves. Whereas I just kind of felt like I was left alone at 17 to figure out how to grow up, because my mom was dealing with her own grieving processes and what she resorted to. And so she didn't really know what to do at some moments in time. And there's lapses in her judgment just as much as mine at some moments, just as much with my brothers in some moments. Um, there's things that she doesn't remember. She doesn't remember the first year of his death. And there's things that I brought up to her and she's like, I don't remember that. I don't remember that happening. So there's a lot of things that, well, she was trying to figure out, and it may have impacted me in some ways growing up in that. Um, but yeah, we'll probably dive into a lot more whenever it comes to that. But that's the gist of where I'm at in this moment in time, the
Yeah.
background of everything.
And a loss like that isn't easy at any age, but being, a teenager and you're trying to experience life for the very first time, like we all are, and it's hard when you feel like you're going through that loss alone, really at any age. Because now at 26 or 25, or I don't even remember when I found out that he had passed away. But even at my age, trying to learn and trying to grow through this loss has been hard. So I can only imagine how it was for you at 17.
Yeah, it was definitely just a huge, because I mean, you grew up, you start learning more about the real world in that moment in time, 15, 16. So whenever you're finally starting to realize the things that you're having to do and starting to grow up in, and the one that you're resorting to for the advice is no longer with you, then it's like, how do I do this without you?
Yeah.
um
Well, it's like you learned a life lesson at that age,
yeah.
and it really sucks that it was
Hmm.
that lesson.
Yeah, it was a huge impact. We had to move away to a new place that we could afford, because it's been me and my mom. It's been me and my mom. Both of my brothers are 10 years plus older than me. So, I mean, I did a lot of the memorial preparations because I knew all the tech sides of it. So I was preparing a lot of this stuff. And it's like, man, I'm preparing my own father's memorial at 17 years old. Um, so there's a lot of things that have to do with that. There's a lot of things that have to do with, okay, what do I do with my life now?
Yeah.
And figuring out how to do college. I've figured out how to do college all by myself. Um,
And she's worked really, really hard. She's kept stepping every step of the way. She gets to a certain point and she's just like, I don't know what to do, but she keeps making those
Mhm.
phone calls. She keeps Emerald shows up and she wants to have a good life. And she's not going to let these traumas or all these negative things that have happened to her let her stay down. Emerald's going to stand up and have a good life.
Thank you.
Emerald, before we move on, I want to ask you a question, and I just want to see what you have to say. Okay.
Okay.
Um, with the loss of my dad, it's been really, really hard, and I know we come from two different backgrounds. You had a very on hands dad and a dad that loved you and showed up,
Mhm.
compared to me who was non-existent. And the last conversation I had with him was him telling me it was my fault for being born, that I ruined his life. So that's two different separate things. But the loss is still hard for me. So is there anything in general that you do to keep the happy positive memories alive for you?
Um, I'm very lucky in my regard, because there's a lot of people who, whenever they do lose their parents of any kind, they had a rough relationship with them. And so I thank the Lord every day. I think whoever is up around anywhere about my relationship that I did have with my father. Um, and that is a huge thing for me, and it is hard to try and um, see a lot of the positives whenever it comes to trying to grieve and trying to move on and trying to accept the fact that, like, he isn't here anymore. And I've been real lucky too in the fact that he was a musician, so I get to listen to his voice whenever I want. That's a huge, huge thing for me, is to be able to hear his voice in some way or term. Like, if I'm really going through it, I'm able to put on his country music album and get me through my day and just think about the conversations that we did have. And that that's one thing that I can definitely say I'm real thankful and I'm real lucky to have had that positive presence with me, although it was for a shorter time than I would have liked, than I'm sure that a lot of people would like. And so I try and remind myself that, like, I'm real lucky because not everybody got to have a good, like, father presence in their lives, and I try to maintain what I know his morals and beliefs were and what he believed in me for and how he was proud of me, and try and maintain that within me as I walk through. Because I mean, I wouldn't have been able to finish college without knowing that he wanted me to, per se. Like, he was very, like, strong in the fact that he's like, I want you to go to school, I want you to, like, succeed in whatever you want to do. So if you want to do this, or if you want to do something else, you put your full ass into it, is what he would say.
I love that.
So that's one thing that I can definitely say I'm very lucky,
Yeah.
and I thank the Lord every single day
Yeah.
for having that, because like I keep saying, not everybody's lucky.
Yeah, and like certain things just trigger me, like going to weddings. I love working weddings, but the daddy daughter dance,
God, yeah.
that destroys me, and that destroyed me before his passing, and even afterwards, it still destroys me. I like, if there was one thing I really wish, I do wish I would have had a great relationship with my father, but that's just a lesson that I learned at 4, 5, 6 years old, and I just kept hoping he'd come around. Do you think listening to his music, does it make you happy? Does it make you sad? Does it make you feel a zillion emotions at once?
It can be a lot, because I mean, I was just at a wedding too. With my partner, we went to one of his friends' weddings, and just I have the same thing, even like good relationship or not, thinking about like, oh, my dad won't be there at my wedding, or like my dad won't be here whenever I decide to have my first kid, or whenever I decide to do these huge milestones that I've always imagined him being there for, to cheer me on, or things like
And just
that.
be in your corner.
Yeah, because even from like a young age, if you want that from your parents, so like you not being able to get that, and then just it continuing through adulthood, like we both don't have that at this moment in time, of like, we won't have our fathers at our wedding, we won't have them during these huge milestones in our life that we would really want them to be there for, in a positive way. But his music definitely, it brings out a more positive memory for me now. Whenever I would first hear it, it was really hard,
Oh, yeah, I can imagine.
because it's just like, oh, that's his voice, but I can't talk to it. I can't talk to that tape that I can listen to whenever I want. But now it's just like, I'm able to look back on the memories and be like, this is what he would say about this. This is what we would both want to talk about. This is what he would see in me.
Yeah.
Things like
For
that.
me, I just a few months ago, I actually unblocked my father on Facebook, because I had him blocked because, like I said, that last conversation didn't set well with me, you know. Um, and you don't realize how short life is. I blocked him for a little bit, and I was like, oh, I'll unblock him later, and then,
Mm-hmm.
well, I never got to have another conversation with him again, and I was looking through the photos tab, because now on Facebook you can click photos and you can scroll up and see
Yeah.
what's sent or videos and stuff like that. And after my grandma's funeral, we were driving through the town that we were at in Colorado, and there was deers walking in the middle of the street, like
Mm-hmm.
in the town.
Yeah.
So I started videoing it, and I think it was around Christmas time or something, and in the back of it you can hear him say like happy holidays or merry Christmas or something like that, and it stopped me dead in my tracks, just to like hear his
Yeah.
voice again.
Mm-hmm.
And then 2 weekends ago, we went to Splashway. And when my dad was around in my life, he was the cool dad. You wouldn't see him for 2, 3, 4 years, sometimes like 6, 7 months, but he'd be the cool dad that would take you to the water parks or get you something super, super cool for that one Christmas, but you wouldn't see him again for another couple years.
Mm-hmm.
But water parks were a big thing of like where the happy memories were. So when I was at Splashway the other day, there was a lot of memories of like, oh my god, I remember him having him take me and my younger siblings to some of these water parks, and just having those memories is nice to hold on
Mm-hmm.
to. And even though he was an asshole for most of his life, there was a couple parts where he was an okay
Mm-hmm.
dude.
Yeah, and because it is hard, especially in your circumstance, where because it sadly does seem like, in a lot of like either separations, or whenever there was like an occurrence of like the birth and things like that, where it's like, oh, the dad isn't around, that it seems to be a common factor of like, they'll be here and there towards the beginning of your life, but then as you grow up, and then as you start to realize more about the situation, or more about like what happened, then it's like, oh, he's dipped, he doesn't want anything to do with it. And like, to me, whenever I think about that, I'm just like, I don't know how you could do that, because it's like your child did fucking nothing. I mean, I work with kids, so I'm like a huge like, you were the one that did what you did in order to have kids, and you need to take on that responsibility. And for me, a huge thing, and I know whenever I want to have kids, it's like, if you decide you don't want to be with your partner anymore, you leave that at the damn door.
Yeah.
You do not bring that in front of your kids. You can put on a facade.
Yeah.
Easily.
I think co-parenting is way easier than some people say it is.
Yeah.
You do not have to like that person you were with no more. You don't even have to be with that person anymore. But if you have a kid with that person, you can be decent to that human being.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, that's a huge thing whenever I think about your story and how I think about some of the kids that I've taught, some of their stories, because I've had quite a few where it's like toxic divorces or toxic separations, and you see it in how the child acts just at 3 years old, just at 4 years old. And it's
well, I remember being that age and being like, well, why does Sally or Samantha or Ethan get to have a mom and a dad and I don't? And I remember asking my mom, like, why dad wasn't around. And you can't tell a 4 or 5-year-old, you know, your dad is doing drugs and I don't want him around. So, you know, she would always make up excuses or, you know, say he was working and things like that. And, you know, for a very long time, she did her best to cover up some of that. But unfortunately, there was different situations where I think I was probably like 5 or 6, and one of my first memories of my dad is him peeing in a toaster that was unplugged, you know, because he was on drugs. You know, another one that's one of my very first memories as well is I remember him dancing with me in the middle of a street, and I thought it was so fun dancing with my dad in the middle of the street. But when I was older and my mom told me about it, I remember her telling me, you know, he was completely drugged out. He didn't even know that we were in the street. And it's crazy to think that, like, I thought we were safe dancing in the middle of the street because he's my parent and my dad and he knows better. You know, but there's a lot of it that I've just sat and wondered, you know, like, why was I never enough, or why couldn't he love me enough to get clean? And I think that's why I don't have an addiction to anything. I've never really done hard drugs. I don't drink alcohol anymore. Addiction runs in my family. It always has in many different family members. So I remember being in 5th grade, being very, very upset with my friends for not taking DARE serious. And if you guys don't know what DARE is, do you remember what it stands for? It's just basically
drugs are really not cool.
Yeah,
I don't really know.
It's something like that. But it's just basically you are at that point in school where you're trying to learn that drugs are not cool and drugs are not the thing that you should be doing. And I remember these kids were not taking it serious. I remember that one kid was like, oh, drugs aren't even really that bad. But I'd be so upset. I'd be like, why are you guys not taking this serious, you know? And they're like, oh, they're only bad because they show that in movies and stuff. But I had seen things, you know, and I remember being so upset that these other kids didn't understand or didn't take it serious. And now that I'm older, it's like, maybe I was more jealous than anything. Because what 5th graders should know how bad drugs are?
Yeah.
Why should they understand that? You know, and if you do come from a home that doesn't have addiction or drug abuse or things like that, you're not going to know any better. So you're really going to think things like that are not as serious as they are. You know, and I think that's when I started realizing, like, how fucked up it really was, you know. But I think that with my dad not being around and my dad doing drugs, he unfortunately taught me a really good lesson.
That's a huge thing. There's a lot of addiction on my dad's side as well as my mom's side of the family. Alcohol. I mean, my dad's mother was an opioid addict, and I saw her overdose firsthand at 16, 15 or 16. I saw that, and just seeing those things, it really does put the perspective of, like, I don't ever want to touch that shit. I don't ever want to touch anything. Like, I'm maybe tried, like, a fucking rum chata And then I was like, I can't do it. I can't do it. Like, it irked me so much to even just have a sip that I was like, no, I can't. Like, I'm too terrified. And I literally felt sick to my stomach from just a sip of it. And I was like, I can't do this. Like, I thought that I would be okay. Like, just, like,
Yeah.
maybe possibly trying alcohol, but it's just, I've just realized it's not gonna ever be for me. And that's the most I've drinking is a sip of rum chata.
And that's okay. We there's like this societal pressure that it's okay to drink, and I'm not saying that it's not okay to drink,
Yeah.
because you're more than welcome to drink if you guys want to drink. You know, I did drink probably from like 16 to like 23, 24. You know, I'm just a year sober now, but I think being sober is cool in any form or fashion. If you're sober from alcohol, sober from drugs, I know some people even have like a sex addiction or things like that. So, you know, if you can get sober from whatever you're fighting with your demons, then I'm proud of you. And it's so, so important to remember that you come first, and self love and self growth has to be at the start of all of that.
For sure. It's a huge thing.
So we're kind of speaking about some of the traumas that we've been through, but have you noticed any certain trauma responses that you have been through or are going through currently?
Yes. There are quite a few, and I know we'll talk later more about like the counseling and things like that that are important to go into with your mental health. But a lot of the things when talking with my counselor, I've noticed I have a lot of trauma responses when it comes to my living conditions that I've had and the things that I've realized in my past growing up that like I didn't even realize until like my father had passed, or like things that like my brothers did or my mom did, things like that, family dynamic stuff. um but there are things like I'm noticing whenever I go and see my partner, whenever I was first with him, I was terrified of going to get a drink alone, like to go to his fridge, because I thought that I would mess up somehow. Like I was afraid to go in the kitchen and grab something to eat or get something to drink.
Especially with his family around, right?
Yes, like doing it in front of people, because like there have just been times in the past where that started a fight or things like that. um and it's a huge thing of like the biggest thing that I'm noticing right now is like taking up space is a difficult thing for me to do and to be okay with in other people's presence. Like I don't want to be perceived, kind of. That's a huge thing. Like I don't want to be in somebody's way. I don't want to be bothering someone. I don't want to be a burden. Because whenever I have said like you're really making me feel like a burden, I've been turned down. I've been like, no, you're not. So a huge thing is my communication was a struggle at first with other people, of confronting them if they did hurt me in some way, and just saying like, hey, like what you did kind of hurt my feelings. I was terrified to do that for the longest time, because in the past it was always met with anger and with, well, that's not right, or in invalidation or yelling or screaming or physical shit.
And
Like,
that's not healthy at all.
no. And so that's a huge thing. And whenever moving into the next chapter, I think there's going to be a lot of things that I don't even realize now are trauma responses of like I always have to have a set schedule, or else I get terrified, because I'm like, what if I'm messing somebody else's thing up? What if I won't have time to do this before they come home? Like I'm terrified of like not getting chores done before someone comes home, or else there'll be a huge breakout. It's so many little things that like in my mind
Are
with my,
so important.
yes, and like with my own child, if they did that, I wouldn't care. Like I always put that towards myself too, in thinking like, if my child did what I did, would I get angry at them? And I'm like, no, I would never have done the what happened in that moment. So there's a lot of things like that there of like
And see, that's you help. That's you breaking some of that generational curse, and you're learning. And I think that's so important because some people get stuck in the, well, this is how I was treated, so this is how I'm gonna treat my kids and the people around me.
yeah.
But it's like, no, I was treated, not well or not a very healthy way. So then I'm going to make sure that the people around me and hopefully the kids that you have in the
Mm-hmm.
future, that are treated with love and respect and understanding. And if there is any fighting, which will definitely
Yeah.
happen, kids are crazy and you're going to make mistakes as a parent, everyone does, but you're going to sit down and hopefully take the time to realize, if I was in this situation as a kid, how would I want my parent to respond?
Yeah, because even a huge thing with me now, a huge thing was financial burden. Becoming like being told that like, oh, your doctor's appointments are just atrocious. You take so much money out of my bank. Things like that. It's like I would not say that to my child. If my child was in pain, if my child was hurting and I had to take them to the doctor, I'm not going to give them the receipt and be like, "Look, this is how much money I had to spend on you because you were hurting. This is ridiculous." Like I
That's
so
really sad.
financial things as well, like just taking up space, taking up just being a human being that needs things. Um Even groceries, even buying my own groceries and them taking up space in the fridge. Like things like that. Like even right now I'm just like that's I'm going to be allowed to do that. That's going to be okay. It's going to be okay to cook. It's going to be okay to talk on the phone. It's going to be okay to leave the house without having to explain everything that I'm doing. It's going to be okay to just
Do the
be,
normal things.
yeah, at 22, you know? So it's just a huge, it's like a revelation that I've been having lately of like, I'm going to get to be me and figure out who I am.
Yeah. Because
Because
you've had to really suppress yourself where you're at in your situation. And
mm,
I hope that there is a day where you do, and you can say it with pride and happiness that, I'm Emerald and I take up space. I think you really deserve that and you need that.
yeah, it's a huge thing, and I think a lot of people, especially younger people, especially with self-esteem issues that stem from things like that, like I keep saying it to myself these past week, it's like you can take up space. That is your human right to take up space, to be present, to talk to other people, to do things that you need to do to survive. Do
Mhm.
things that you need to do to have a mental check-in with yourself. If you had a rough week at work, you're allowed to go get your nails done. You're allowed to go do what you want with your money. You're allowed to do these things and not be ridiculed. And you're allowed to ask questions. So it's just a huge revelation for me, and I'm sure that for a lot of people growing up and getting out of specific family dynamics, that's going to be a huge revelation for others.
Yeah. It's really hard for me to talk about trauma responses because I feel like sometimes I'm still living in some of my trauma responses. Some of the worst things that can happen to a person has happened to me, so I really have to remind myself, like, I am me and my body is mine and no one else owns me. The people that I surround myself with are my friends and my family and people that I want to be surrounded with. Um, One of my biggest love languages is words of affirmation, you know. Um, and I've done modeling and acting and pageants and everything throughout my life. So everyone on all my comments are like, "You're beautiful, you're pretty," things like that. And it's like, while I appreciate that, I really like to have words of affirmation about my character and who I am as a person. You know, Growing up, I think I had a lot of other disabilities that I never really learned until I was older, you know, the ADHD, the autism, things like that. And in school, I was just always that pretty kid, you know, and it was like, and I was super smart, and there was a lot of things that got overlooked because of that, you know. And now that I'm older, I'm like, well, I want to know what you really think about me. You know, I love the comments about that I'm funny or that I'm silly or
Mm-hmm.
things like that, you know, because I'm just really tired of people commenting on my appearance, you know. And a lot of that, you know, you guys are probably thinking, oh, that's just pretty privilege, but you know, um, I went through a lot of bad things because of my pretty privilege, you know, unfortunately.
I think that can also be a huge universal thing for a lot of women, a lot of girls growing up. I mean, I remember being catcalled by age 7
Yeah.
at a splashway,
Oh.
a
Oh.
splashway, and it's so. I think that's a lot of things that a lot of the women out there can relate to whenever it comes to that degree. And I'm sure there's a lot of instances with men, non binary people as well. Um, but I'm just speaking from my experience, from Serena's experience of us being women, of how we've noticed it throughout our childhood and growing up, of like, sure, compliments about how we look are great, but I am also words of affirmation girly. And so it is a huge thing for me as well to be like, your work ethic is great. That is a huge thing. That's a huge thing with me too. If I'm ever put down for being lazy, for not doing enough, like I have a fear of failure, so it's a huge thing. And then I also have ADD, so I always feel like I have to be doing something or else I'm not doing enough.
Exactly.
It's just it's a never ending cycle because you want to feel like you're doing enough, and then just what you grew up with, not doing enough to satisfy the person that you look up to, things like that.
Yeah. And I wish when I was younger, I would have learned how I was as a person, and that way I can learn how to take care of myself better and quicker and easier, you know. But now, you know, I think I started thinking about it when I was like 23, 24. So, you know, the past couple of years, I've actually been able to sit down and find things that work for me, you know,
Right.
because I feel like as a human being, you always are trying to learn and grow and put love into yourself continuously. All right, so kind of moving forward about like how do we heal? So let's talk about the healing process of, you know, moving out and trying to get away from all that trauma and ugliness and just all those bad feelings that we have. You know, I've been out of my, you know, my home from my family for a few years now, and Emerald's jumping out in the next week or so,
Yeah.
you know. So for me personally, you know, trying to work on my emotional thought process and my healing process was hard, you know. um, Not having my dad around was hard, and I've kind of already talked about that. My mom did the best she could with 5 kiddos, but there was a lot of times I feel like all of us needed extra love and support. And you know, looking back, you know, like I said, she did the best she could, but there's always like those what ifs and things like that. And for me, I have to start letting go of those what ifs. It's not a what if. It's That's how I grew up, and very bad things happened to me and some of my siblings. And there's a lot of things that probably should never have happened that did happen, unfortunately. And we just have to move forward from that. You know, we have to let go of things like that. And I get to choose who's in my circle now. I'm an adult and I get to pick my family, and I get to pick my friends. And if someone makes me mad, I get to tell them. I get to tell them that my feelings are real and valid. And I never thought that I would find this Serena. Little tiny Serena would be so proud of myself for having my own place and 200 plus plushies, and that I've always followed my dreams no matter what. I've wanted to do modeling and acting, and now I'm streaming and playing video games. And I've always wanted to just follow my dreams and believe in my passions, you know? And so just letting go of all the negativity has been very, very hard. And there's still days that trauma hits me hard. It's like running into a brick wall. And I feel like all of us as a whole, as human beings, can understand that. And I feel like that's a very valid for all of us to have. But working on, self-love and self-growth, and just having words of affirmation for ourselves has been very healing for me, you know, um, and just knowing that I'm out of those situations now has really turned my life around, always trying to have a better relationship with some of my family members, and sometimes it's very hard to have good, healthy relationships with family. I'm sure a bunch of you guys out there watching can understand. Um, but I don't believe that family is always there for you, because they're not, you know. But you also get to pick your friends in life, and sometimes friends become family. And I think that's very important for everyone to learn, that it's not just your family who can love you and support you. So, Emerald, what do you think healing is going to be like for you moving forward?
It's definitely, like you said, it's going to be a huge process, and there's going to be things that I never even really thought about. Because, I mean, like you said with the family thing, family doesn't always have to be blood. Um, and even blood family isn't really true family at times. I can definitely say, like, after my dad passed, no male figure in my family really stepped up. No one really tried to help me through that. And that's a huge thing that I'm like, no, like male figure in my family really tried to not exactly like step in and be the dad role, but just look over me and see how I'm doing whenever it comes to that regard. And I still think about that. And I still think about like if I did have a family member who was dealing with that and like lost their mother or things like that at my age, I would definitely step up and I would try and help them in any way that I could. And so there's just a lot of things whenever it comes to the healing process. Like I said, that I'm not gonna even think about until it happens, or that like there's a trigger response over the littlest thing. Um, I mean, for me, loud noises still scare the crap out of me at times. If like my partner's yelling at a video game, I still jump, and it's like it's nothing against him, and there's that's just going to take some getting used to, and I think with time it's going to be like it's okay for people to be loud because it's not always directed at you, it's not always negative. Like loud noises don't always have to be a negative thing. Things like that too is a huge thing. um yeah, that's pretty much a
Yeah.
huge
And
aspect.
I think a big one on top of what you were just saying is coming to terms with the fact that people are not going to love you the way that you love them. You had just made a point where you were like, I would do this for other people. When you get a little bit older and you live through those traumas and things like that, you start to realize that people are not going to do the same thing that you would do for them. And it can be very sad and it can be very heartbreaking, but you have to continue to be who you are. If you are a good person and you want to cross those oceans for those people, keep crossing those oceans and keep being a good person. But just know that that's not always going to happen in return. And that's one of the biggest lessons I feel like everyone in life has to learn at some point. It's sad.
Yeah, definitely. And I think another huge thing that like whenever you talk about like being able to get the things that you want and work towards it, like with your plushies, I feel like I've already started doing that now, just as like a little side note. Like healing your inner child is a huge thing. um
Amen.
like obviously like coming from a family like we were poor, sometimes we didn't even have plumbing in our house, sometimes we didn't have the lights on until the next week, things like that. So being able to heal your inner child and explore the interests that you love, like I'm starting to collect Monster High dolls again, shit like
Yay.
that, and just like allowing yourself to do that, allowing yourself
Yeah.
to have your special interests and heal that inner child any way that is in a healthy form.
See, that reminds me of kind of why I do a lot of charity events.
Yeah.
Um, a lot of people look at my social medias and think that I have this amazing home life and that I've come from money, and that, I even had a rude comment. Some guy told me that, that I should be lucky because my dad gave me my car. And I was like, when did my dad give me my car? Like, I've worked for everything that I've had my whole life, you know? Um, But same thing with you,
Yeah.
being broke my whole life. There was a lot of times where Christmas would not have happened without Toys for Tots or for other very generous human beings, very genuine human beings,
Yeah.
generous human beings. Um, so if you guys didn't know, I've been a part of a bunch of charity events the past few Christmases, and I've helped over probably around 70 to 100 kids have a Christmas because of my community and because I'm willing to put in the work and be a Santa. And I don't need a thank you for that. I don't even need the kids to know that the it comes from my community or from my hard work. I just love knowing that I've helped kids have a beautiful Christmas and that some of those kids were going to possibly wake up with nothing on Christmas morning. So the fact that I can play Santa and help someone out the way that someone helped me out when I was younger, little Serena just blossoms inside of my whole body when she hears that. It makes me feel very happy and fuzzy, and just being kind to other people is one of my biggest missions in everything I do on stream, in real life. Being kind is so important, and I hope that you take that with you on your whole journey.
I hope so.
Okay, so now we're going to talk about why it's important to seek professional help, counseling, or even just finding genuine friends or family that you can share these thoughts and emotions with. I'm gonna let you start with the whole therapy thing because I've never seen a therapist, but I've been thinking about it.
Uh, I go to one. I am sadly having to have my last session be tomorrow because of moving and the place that I do go to. They don't offer virtual things, and I'm real lucky. So my dad was a counselor, and so I was able to get into a place that he worked at and have a counselor that worked with him. So she understands my issues and everything at hand whenever it comes to that. I have been with her for over a year, like going about every other week or so. Depends on the issues at hand. Um, it has definitely helped me whenever it comes to my family dynamic at the moment and just be like, here are the issues that I'm dealing with. How do I go about dealing with this? And her just being a very upfront and being like, you don't have to deal with this. You can go and live your life. And you don't have to owe everybody an explanation as to why. Um, and she was the one that has this thing stuck in my head of like, you're allowed to take up space. You're allowed to be you and figure yourself out. Um, so I think that therapy, counseling, can be a very beneficial thing, but you have to be open to doing that. Because I know, like, some people in my family, they're very much like, I'm not doing that. I'm never going to do that crap. And if you're going into it with a closed mind and you're not willing to, like, open up and try and come through with like an unbiased mind talking about the issues at hand, then you're not really going to be getting a lot of help. If you're lying to your counselor
Yeah.
and things like that, it's not really going to help. So it's important even beforehand while you're possibly searching for counseling, therapy, things like that, to have a mindset going forward of, okay, I'm going to go get this done. One, don't want to waste my money and lie to somebody when it's not going to help you. And two, being able to be open and honest with that person. And you might have to take some time to figure out who's the right fit. Just the same with doctors, just the same with tennis shoes, just the same with clothes. You have to pick and see who would be the best
Yeah.
psychologist, counselor, friend, anybody who you can go to.
Because I even had a friend, and I know it's a silly term, but I had a friend tell me, because I've started talking about that I want to see a therapist, and she gave me really good points of like, I think everyone should see a therapist. I don't care if you came from the best of the best home. Everyone has issues, everyone has trauma, and if everyone had a therapist, life would be a little bit easier, and that's her thoughts, her opinions. I totally agree with that. Some people are gonna be like, no, 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 I don't want to
I'm
see a
fine.
therapist, I'm fine, it's fine. But she even said, feel free to date around and find the perfect therapist. Someone who's really good for your best friend is not gonna vibe with you or understand you,
Hmm.
but there is going to be a therapist or someone of professional help who's willing to help you and who will understand you.
Yeah.
I've been too scared to see a therapist, but I'm really hoping in the next couple months I start moving forward and having the opportunity to see someone for my traumas. I'm just really scared to hear what they have to say. Because I've bottled up a lot, and there's a lot of things that I don't think I'll ever share out loud to you guys, or even some of my close friends won't always know the darkest, deepest traumas that I have. But I feel like that's the same for so many of us out there. But being able to find close friends that I do feel comfortable sharing some of my traumas with is super fun and super amazing. One of the biggest things I have to remind myself when it comes to sharing trauma with friends is make sure when you're about to trauma dump to your friends that they're in an okay headspace. You know, Therapists have education and they have a lot of time and responsibility on their shoulders, and they know how to handle a lot of triggering conversations when a lot of us who are not therapists are not licensed therapists, so we don't know how to always react, or we might not always say the right thing. So when you are looking to talk to a friend, I think it's really important to ask them, hey, do you have spoons? Do you have the time for an important conversation that might be triggering? I think it's so important to open conversations like that instead of instantly just trauma dumping and pooping on your friend. Now, if you have a very open relationship with your best friend, your sister, your brother, your mom, your dad, and you guys kind of know that you're allowed to trauma dump on each other, that's totally different. That's totally cool. A lot of times, significant others have that open door that you can trauma dump whenever you want. um for me, I never know when I can talk to my friends, and I always feel like I'm a burden, kind of like Emerald. I'm a little bit scared to take up space. So I'm always like, hey, friends, can I
Can I
trauma dump?
please?
Can I tell you
Yeah.
guys really sad stuff right now? And I know it's funny and silly to hear me say that, but I feel like that has helped build a lot of trust. And when I say that to my friends, they know that I need to put my phone down for a second, or I need to turn the TV off for a second, or I need to do a phone call instead of just messaging you right now.
Mhm.
Being on the same page with whoever you're talking to is very important. Rather it's a friend, significant other, therapist. But like Emerald said, I think the most important thing when it comes to your feelings is being truthful. If you cannot be truthful with your words, it's not really worth having deep, dark conversations.
Yeah.
You have to know who you are, you have to know how you're feeling, and sometimes that can be the scariest thing. So I really think that it's setting in for me that, Emerald's about to take her first plunge into, adulthood, and so we're going to talk about, building a new life and how do we do that and how do we make new friendships and relationships. And for me, I remember when I first moved out, and it was scary and it was sad and there was so many thoughts attached to it. You're like, you've wanted to be an adult your whole life until you're finally an adult and you're like, I don't know if I want this
Yeah.
anymore. you know um Trying to find people who fit in your corner is super important. From as long as I can remember, I knew that I personally didn't want kids. So now that I'm 26 and almost all of my friends have kids now, um, it's hard to have really good friendships with everyone when everyone's kind of started their own life. I feel like some of my friends who have kids have worked really, really hard to make sure I feel included and seen and valued, and I love all of them for that. But I even tried Bumble BFF for a little bit, trying to find friends who want to hang out, who have similar interests. Because there's a lot of people who don't take my content creation very serious. I'm 26. There's a lot of people who were like, you need a real job and you need to get off the internet and stop playing games and, all of that, which I want to do whatever I want to do. And if I can make money and pay my bills and me and my partner are okay with what I do, then I'm going to do what I want to do, you know? But building a life that I'm happy about and that I'm living a life that I get to have fun. I love my day job. I love being a part time photographer's assistant. I love working as a day coordinator. And I love being able to create content here on the internet. I always want to make sure that I'm happy with what I'm doing. The same thing with my partner. I want to make sure he's happy and that our bills are paid, of course, because having a place to live, food on the table, a car, things like that that make you an adult, sometimes all of that does suck. The bills, doctor's appointments, vet appointments, things like that, that does suck. But I have to remind myself, like, we're living this life and we need to live it to the fullest. So the friends, the family, the people I surround myself with have to love me for me. And like you said earlier, I'm here to take up space. I'm here to do whatever I want to do to make myself happy. So what about you, Emerald? What are you gonna do moving forward to start building your adult life?
That's gonna be a huge thing too. That includes the healing process of like, how do I move forward? Because I think in general, it is hard for adults outside of college as well to build new friendships for sure. Whenever your mind is just set on, okay, work, come home, take care of what needs to be taken care of. If it's your kids, if it's your dogs, if it's housekeeping, things like that. It's a lot of work to try and find time for like getting yourself out there per se. Because I mean, going up there, I'm not gonna have any buds up there. It's just me and my mans. So I've already started looking into like, I used to love playing volleyball, so looking at co-ed volleyball clubs to possibly be a part of. Just things that I need to do to come out of my shell. Otherwise, I would just be doing the constant cycle of working to make money, getting, like, making sure that I'm fed, that my man's fed, that the dog's fed, that everything's done and clean. And you don't want that to be your life for a constant time. You want to be able to make good memories and cherish those and make new relationships of any kind along the way. I'm real lucky that I do have my good online friendships and I have my good classmates that I made whenever I got my forensics degree. We have our ghouls nights whenever we can because we all live in different cities now. Um, so it's good to be able to remind yourself to like check in on your friends whenever you do start your new chapters in life. Because I did have past friendships that whenever they realize that I'm not wanting what they want in their life, they decided that they didn't want to put an effort, that they thought that pushing me away would be the best thing to do instead of just trying to maintain a good friendship. And I mean, this person was gonna be my, like, what is a maid of honor, you know? But because of, like, people growing and realizing that we're gonna have different steps in life, I don't know if they realized they just didn't want to put in the effort, whatever. So just trying to find friendships and trying to see what other people's intentions are in that and keeping an open mind and finding time to let yourself trust again is a huge thing.
And I think that's a universal for everybody. We've all had a friend who used to be our best friend, who's no longer our best friend because of very shitty situations. And we're like, well, now I don't know if I want to trust anyone or have to go through learning a whole new friendship. But I think one of the beautifulest things about living on this earth is love and friendship. And being able to find that in so many different human beings is so worth it. Yes, heartache and heartbreak sucks. It really does. But putting yourself out there and, like you said, trying new things and signing up for different activities is so important. And something that I've learned as an adult, I'm, a little bit older than Emerald, all of us want to be messaged first. All of us are so busy. Like you said, we wake up in the morning, we have to go to work, we come home, we make dinner, and then no, I stream. I'm working all the time. But there's a whole lot of people who are doing things like that. So there's so many of us who are sitting on our phones being like, so and so hasn't texted me, so and so hasn't called me. If you're thinking about it, then message them. Because I am that person as well. I want to be messaged first, just the same as all of us. but it is a two-way street when it comes to communication and love and keeping those friendships alive. And then you could be like, well, I did it the last two times. Okay, well, if you really want that person in your life,
Talk
message
to him.
them that third and fourth and fifth time, and don't be afraid to have hard conversations with your friends,
Yes.
because I've had hard conversations with my friends where our love languages weren't being met. One of my friends was like, I need you to call me, I'm not going to respond to a text. And I was like, it's really hard for me as an adult to call people when I have such a busy life. I like to shoot a sweet text. So now we meet in the middle. She'll send me a text sometimes, sometimes I'll call her. And we've had that conversation of like, we're still good, but we won't talk every day like we used to. And that kind of sucks when you're an adult, because I am so used to like the sleepovers and talking to my friends all the time. And that's just not how adulthood is for the most part. But if
Mm.
you want to have those relationships with your friends, you have to be willing to put in the effort. Someone can't be communicating with you the whole time. Something I've learned as well is someone asks you to hang out and you can't, because it happens all the time. We're all super busy. Don't let them keep inviting you. If you can't make it to something, turn around and ask them to hang out with you in a week and a half, 2 weeks when you do have time. Make sure if you see someone putting in the effort that you're putting in the effort back into them, because there's a lot of us that it's really hard and it's really scary to ask people to hang out with us. So if someone's asking you to hang out and you can't make it work this time, that's fine. I get it. Life happens and you have work, you have to babysit, you end up being sick. My biggest thing is if you say yes to someone and you don't show up, you better let them know ahead of time.
Yeah.
Do not be a no call, no show kind of bitch. That is
Mm.
fucked up.
Yeah. And another thing I will say too, especially going into adulthood and focusing on your relationship with your partner and things like that, it's important to take time outside of that relationship and realize you are your own person. You are, even though technically if you want to be the romantic, like we have become one during marriage, it's like yes, but you need to have those important things to yourself.
You
Like
need your own identity.
my man is gonna play Destiny 2, and I don't think I'm gonna be able to touch that game. I've tried, I can't do it. That's his thing with his homies, and then I have my spooky things with mine. I have my Dead by Daylight with my girlies. So it's just you need to have time to realize that as well in your relationship. You don't want to be completely emotionally dependent on your partner, and that can be a huge thing in healing
Or
too.
financially either.
Yes. It's important to have like that, like your own independence. And if you talk things out to where like if you are wanting the more traditional aspect of like your man doing all the bills and shit, which props to you, whatever you want to do, but make sure you're holding up your bargain, make sure he's holding up his bargain, and just talk it out with your partner. It's a huge thing. Communication is a huge thing, and it can be hard coming from a dysfunctional family and just having to take time to realize that and not like just be completely emotionally dependent on them or like have an anxious attachment style or
Because that's a lot of
yeah.
pressure on your partner that you might not realize that you're putting onto your partner. And they might think that that's okay in the beginning, but that's a lot of pressure. And that's, like I said, that's so much on one person, you know? And that's when you need to sit down and think, oh, maybe I need to go to therapy, or maybe I need to seek help for someone because of the situation. But having your own identity is so important. Rather it's in friendships, significant others, families, you have to know who you are and you have to have your own hobbies and your own interests. Same thing with me. Monster loves World of Warcraft. He loves video games. And recently, as you know, as an adult, I've recently found my love into gaming, which that helps us in so many different ways bond over things. But I can still go out and model or act, or I can go hang out with the girlies whenever I want. I mean, we're doing girls night next
Mm.
week or something, you know. It's so important to have your own space. As I'm finding my independence as being an adult and living by myself for a few years, it's been hard trying to figure out what actually it means to be an adult. So how do we do it financially? How do we just make sure that we're taking care of ourselves mentally, physically, all of that fun stuff, you know? For me, I'm really lucky that I've had a partner who really believes in me and my dreams. So like you said, he does a lot of the working, he pays a lot of the bills, but we've had that conversation very early on that this works for us. And if something were to ever change, we would have a sit down conversation and we would move forward and see what works for us. You know, I still pay my car, I do groceries, I do some of the helping. You know, it's not just all on him. But I do some of the cooking and the cleaning and things like that. And he just really wants me to follow my dreams, you know. But budgeting is super important, and it's really hard when you are an impulsive shopper online. Amazon kills me, and it's so bad. I've gotten to the point where nowadays, when I go to buy something, I will try to ask Monstar, hey, do I need this? And not in the fact of like, hey, you know, can I buy this? Because Monstar's going to tell me I can buy whatever I want with my money. You know, it's not him having, you know, that brain fart. Okay, it's not like he's in control of all of our money, but it's nice to have someone sit down and be like, yes, you're gonna use that, you're gonna have a want for that, you're gonna have a need for that, and I do think it's worth your money to get XYZ. You know, sometimes I'll ask my friends. You know, recently I've been wanting a walking treadmill, I'm still thinking about getting one. But you know, they're, you know, $150 to $300, and that's a little bit spendy and not something I can afford right now. But it's really important to set things aside of like what is important and then your wants. So like your needs and your wants. And you always need to make sure that you're taking care of most of your needs, you know, your wants or your extra money, things like that. But as an adult, you really need to have a savings account and putting money aside. Um, but it's really hard for me to say that because I'm a spender. Do you have any advice or thoughts for that?
Yeah. Um, for the most part, still living with my mom, I'm getting my gas, I'm getting my groceries on my own, and figuring out how to properly budget that. Cause I mean, right now for the past few years, I've been doing overtime in school, but then working a part-time job because that's all that I could emotionally handle. Because I was doing 18 hours, like, or 18 credits a semester, which basically, if you want to put that into math, think of it as like that's they usually want to say like double it, so think of like 36 hours of work a week for school, and then put your part-time job on top of that. So that's basically what I've been doing is insane schoolwork, like as soon as I get home from work. So having to budget like the part-time, because I mean I'm long distance with my partner at the moment, not for long, but having to make sure that you save so that I have enough gas for the week, or if I'm not able to make it that week, and be like, sorry babe, I can't come, I don't have enough gas money. If he wants to spot me that week, then cool. It's just we talk those things out. And especially if you're going into adulthood on your own and finding a job and finding your own place, it can be real difficult in this economy to try and find places that are safe, to try to find things that are in your budget. I've had to do a lot of budgeting. A good app that I would recommend is either Rocket Money, I believe is one, and then I think there's one called like Albert's, something like that. But basically, you put in all of your like income that you're getting each month, and it'll deduct the taxes that come out of it depending on your state and things like that. And then you can put in what are your monthly subscriptions that you're doing. Do I really need to have a Netflix account and a Hulu account? So just a lot of things that you need to put in perspective as you go into adulthood, of like, you may have had a little bit of extra spending money whenever living with your parents, but now you have to really think about what are the ideal things that you need to put your money towards. Do you really need that Hulu account every single month, or would you rather just have like Netflix?
Yeah.
So just a lot of things you have to put into perspective. Is like, do you really need that gym membership that you only go once a month,
Me.
or like,
That's what I'm trying to decide. I'm like, do
mm-hmm.
I need that? I'm like, I can cancel my gym membership and get that walking pad.
uh
um,
So yeah, it's a huge thing of just trying to learn how to budget, and it's real difficult in this economy. Like, I'm very lucky in my spot right now that I have a partner that I'm willing to go with while taking this new step in life so that we're able to afford getting our own place, things like that. But
But you've had to like stop because you weren't sure if you were going to be able to stay with them. So
yeah,
I know that she's looked at apartment prices. She's had to try to figure out how much money she would need to be able to
yeah.
afford an apartment by herself. So
Mhm.
she's looked and she's seen these numbers and she sees how hard it is for one person to be financially stable of even a one bedroom apartment in Texas. And it's
Yes.
crazy.
It is insane. And then even with all the interviews I've been having, that's a huge thing too. You need to stick up for yourself and you need to stick to your guns. You do not people please in interviews. Do not kiss their butt and be like, "Oh, this much an hour? Okay." Whenever it's like, "Oh, I won't be able to live off of ramen off of that."
Yeah.
So you need to. I've had to stick to my guns with a lot of these places, and there's been a few where they're like, "I'm sorry, we can't meet your standards. That wasn't the job that you were supposed to have then. You need to just keep working and be like, here is all of this experience that I have. Here's the education that I have. I deserve more than the base pay that you're willing to give out based on these skills that I am here to offer." So you need to really sell yourself,
And you need to know
especially.
your own worth. I think
Mm-hmm.
that's so important because a lot of times people don't know how to sell themselves. People don't know how to promote themselves and make themselves look good on paper.
Yes.
Feel free to even fluff yourself up a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Companies do it. You should it too.
Yeah.
Get that bread, get that head, and make sure you're able to be financially responsible in the life that you're living.
Mm-hmm. It is definitely important. Think about that before you jump the gun.
Super,
For sure.
super, because you do not want to get in a situation where you don't know what to do next,
Mm-hmm.
you know. And there's a bunch of us who, who don't have help from families, and if shit were to hit the fan, we don't ever want to be in that situation of like, I don't know what to do next.
Yeah. So that's another thing too. Make sure, like you were talking with me earlier, it's important to have a plan B, because even though you may picture that everything is going to work out and be cherries and blossoms and cupcakes and rainbows, that's not how life always is. So you need to make sure that you have a backup plan and know what you're going to do next.
Yeah, and you can't stay in a situation just because it's comfortable. You need to be happy and full of love, and you have to be happy with the people who surround you. And if you're not happy, you need to do your best to try to get out of that situation. And I know sometimes that's easier said than done. I know a bunch of us have been in a situation like that and we thought we would never get out of it. Um, but there is help out there if you need help. But we as humans need to work hard to make sure that we're taking care of ourselves too. Let's talk about something that's not easy to talk about. Let's talk about moving on and trying to forgive those who have harmed you or caused you trauma, or just, trying to forgive in general. How do you start that process, because it's hard. And for me, I feel like it's a constant thing. I'm always trying to remind myself, and like you said this earlier, we're all humans and we're all living this life for the very first time. So we're going to make mistakes and we're going to hurt each other. And I have to remind myself that people who've caused me trauma, hopefully didn't realize how much trauma that they were causing me. They probably did know at some point that they did cause some harmful behaviors, and that did lead up to causing me trauma. But I have to try to just let that go at the end of the day, and forgive myself. There's times where I've been a shitty human being, and that the only thing that I can do is try to be a better person tomorrow. And that's all I have control over. I don't have control over the people who are mean and hurtful and who do cause trauma. Hopefully, we can send them good vibes and love, and maybe one day they can seek therapy and they can learn from their actions, and hopefully, one day that they can become better people, because I want that for everybody. And that is like a silly little dream. That is never going to happen, unfortunately. There's the joke on the internet that it's like, I wouldn't have to go to therapy if the people who caused me therapy would go to therapy, and it's haha, it's funny, but it's like some of these people are never going to seek help who really truly need it. And it's like, how do you forgive those people? especially when it's the people closest to you who are supposed to love you and protect you and to make sure that you're okay. But they don't do any of that, and you have to learn that, again, like we talked about earlier, sometimes the things that you would do for people, they wouldn't do for you. And sometimes the people who are supposed to love you and take care of you are going to do the most harmful, shittiest things to you, unfortunately. And you just have to learn to be better than that. And that's something that I see in both of us,
Mm-hmm.
is that we wouldn't do that to anyone else, and we have to forgive and we have to move on. And trying to forgive my dad when he's no longer here has been hard. Trying to forgive him for some of the very shitty things he has said to me is hard. Because I always thought I would forgive him in real life. I always knew he would come around and apologize, and I always thought he would be a part of my life. And it's hard to know that that's not going to happen. So I have to forgive someone that's no longer here. And it's like, how do you do that? But you just realize, he had his own traumas and his own hurt, and he had a lot of things that he never really expressed to people. And while it was very shitty, and I wish he would have got therapy, and I wish he would have stayed away from drugs, he never did. And we can't stay in that what if anymore. We just have to let go, and we just try to make our life better today and tomorrow and the next day. And we try to let go of that negativity. What do you think?
It's definitely a huge thing that I'm having to figure out at this moment in time of how am I going to move forward from a lot of the things that I've dealt with. And I have tried my best with my family members to realize they were grieving. They were trying to turn to things that are not healthy, and they may not realize it. They put on the facade to other people, but they weren't good at it with me, and I realized it. Um, and I really try and have that empathetic stance of they were hurting, they were dealing with it, and it has at least taught me how I want to go about um, building my own family and building my relationship even stronger with my partner, um, and building it stronger with his family, who at times his family has treated me better than my own blood. Um, so there's a lot there whenever it comes to it, and there's a lot I'm having to realize and a lot that I'm having to think about once I finally step out and think about um, just a lot of the things that have attributed to my mental health, to my well-being, to my physical health, um, and the things that I'll be allowed to do that will help my physical health, that will help my mental health. And I still have so much love for my family. I really do. Um, and I still have anger towards some of the things, but I really try my best to understand that they were dealing with a huge loss in their lives too, and they didn't know how to go about it because they weren't wanting to seek help. So they didn't know what to do with that anger, with that sadness, with that frustration. So if I was the one around and they took it on me, that's what they did. Um, and I understand it. I'm coming to a point where I'm realizing it's not my fault. Um, and that's a lot for me to say, because for the longest time, I thought that I was such a burden and that I was such a part of my friends, such a fuck up to my family because of how I was treated, how I was left behind, basically to fend for myself to some degree. And although they may not agree with me saying that, there are a lot of things that I had to do that I shouldn't have had to do at 17 years old on my own. Um, so it's just a lot of figuring out what I want to do next with that relationship.
Yeah, and forgiveness really comes within. And I know that kind of sounds silly and cliche, but you have to be willing to let go and you have to be willing to forgive someone. But my biggest thing, and maybe this is me not letting wanting to let go of everything, is you can forgive, but you don't have to forget. You can remember how mean or how shitty someone was to you. You don't have
Mm-hmm.
to forgive someone and then it be princess and rainbows and unicorns with them the next day. You can hold someone at an arm's distance and be like, I forgive you for being a human being and making those mistakes. But from here on out, this is how it's going to be. These are my boundaries. These are my thoughts. And if you want to be in my life, because you're allowed to keep people in your life who cause you trauma if you want to, but you're also allowed to be like, get out of my life, goodbye, you don't serve a purpose anymore, or it's not healthy to have you in my life anymore. But you get to make that decision, not the people around you.
Mm-hmm.
This is your life. Forgiveness starts with you. But like I said, really think on it. Feel all of your thoughts. Feel your happy thoughts, your sad ones, your anger issues. Feel everything and then decide what you want to do, because I feel like that's one of the very first things that you have to do to move forward and to forgive. Because forgiveness doesn't happen overnight. Forgiveness takes a long, long time. I know that this conversation was very hard. I know it was hard for Emerald. I know it was hard for myself. I can't imagine how it is for some of you guys out there who are listening, who are going through very traumatic parts of your life, or even just thinking about past traumas that you've had in the past. So I want to say thank you guys for listening, but just remind yourself, like, that you can take small, manageable steps. That, of course, there is a light at the end of the tunnel with a huge goal. Like, there's a goal for us long term for all of us. But sometimes we can't get outside the tunnel yet. Sometimes it starts with picking up the lighter on the ground or the rocks on the ground and making a fire. Sometimes it's that first couple of steps that are so important. You're on the ground and you don't know how to move forward, find a hand that's willing to help you out. You don't have to be outside of the tunnel immediately. That doesn't happen for anybody. That doesn't happen overnight. Taking that first step is so important to get help. Rather, it's standing up for yourself, learning your own goals, your thoughts, even looking at your past achievements and thinking about what achievements do you want next? What goals do you want for yourself next? There's so much that you can do that it doesn't have to be huge, big steps. What do you think?
I definitely agree. And one thing that I will say to myself and for a lot of people, whenever you come from a place where it's hard to lean on the people that you were supposed to trust the most, it's important for you to realize that you're allowed to lean on the people that you trust and that you love. You don't have to face all of this alone. You can ask for help. You are allowed to ask for help, and if you trust the person that is willing to help you, then that is good. That is great. I mean, for me, my little steps throughout this entire process, it's like just get through this semester, just get through this associate's degree, just get through the second associate's degree, and now it's get through this bachelor's degree in a few days, get through the end of this week, get through all your things and moving up there. Then you could finally take that breather and figure out what this new chapter is going to look like for me, for my partner, for our family.
Yeah, I think a lot of small goals for people who can't get out of situations by themselves is a lot of people need to get a car or a license. So, taking driver's ed, getting a car, getting classes, getting a part time job, all of those are small, manageable goals. And if you need help, that there is people in your circle who are willing to help you. People can give you, I've asked for so many rides in the past because I didn't get a car till later on in life. It took me a long time to get my license. And I feel like those are really good goals to set for yourself. You can make it happen. The biggest thing that I want you to take from today's segment is to be hopeful. Life is hard and full of so much trauma, but be hopeful that you can get out of that situation.
Mm-hmm. That's a huge thing for me. That's the only thing that has really gotten me through all the crap that has happened with me, with huge friendships. I had a 10-year friendship and had a 7-year friendship in the span of months. I had a lot of things happen in the span of a year that really broke me down while I'm trying to just continue and get out of this environment that I'm in. And for me, my hope, like my huge thing that I looked to is thinking about what my dad wants for me and that he wants good for me. That is my thing. That's, and everybody's thing is going to be different. For you, it could be, I'm doing this for my partner. I want to be better for myself. I want to be better for my partner. I want to be better for my family. I want to be better for the people that I'm helping in my career. That's going to be a huge one for me as I continue working. I know that I'm wanting to specialize in children's cases whenever I get the chance in some criminal justice degree, because I love working with kids and I know that I have the mental strength in order to deal with those hard cases whenever it comes to children. And I know that that's a huge thing that's driving me towards continuing to work in this career and work towards my education, is helping out children that are in possible similar situations. Um, so that's a huge thing too.
Just believe in yourself, work hard. Life is not easy, and there is a lot of people out there who do get handouts. You have to stop comparing yourself, though. There was a long, long time when I was in middle school and high school that I would compare myself to my friends who had, a mom and a dad that were both financially responsible, that were very there and very able to give them everything. But I even have heard them tell me their traumas. Everyone struggles, no matter how beautiful or amazing or how put together everyone's life is. Everyone struggles, and you have to stop comparing yourself. The only one you can compare yourself to is who you are today, and that you can be better tomorrow. And if you're out there and you don't know what to do next, and you are someone who is creating trauma for other people, I do hope that you seek help. I do hope that you take a moment and think about your life in general. You're allowed to be happy, you're allowed to surround yourself with loving people, but you cannot be the red flag. You cannot be a toxic person in other people's lives and expect for everyone to continue to love you and support you. There has to be a moment in your head where you realize that I'm creating trauma. I'm the red flag. Um, and if you are that person, I do hope that you're able to get help, and hopefully you stop creating so much trauma and hurtful and negativity out there, because that's not cool, my dude.
I think it's important to have a heart to heart with your partner, with your family, with your friends, just seeing like, hey, are we good? Is there anything I can work on? It is so important to take accountability. Even in my issues with family, I was able to, towards the end, I that's a huge thing for me too, is I was always so defensive a lot of the time with some of the issues. If like my family was so confrontational to me about every little thing, you develop this defense mechanism. So I've had to learn how to actually sit back, take what they're saying, and take accountability as well. But also realize they, even though they may be a part of the issue, make sure that you are taking accountability for your actions that could be creating more of the issue at hand. So it's important to talk with your friends, talk with your family, be like, hey, did I hurt your feelings whenever I said this? Is there anything, a huge thing in relationships, is there anything that I can do to help fill up your love bar, or things like that? So I think it's real important. I like to do that a lot with my man, is being like, hey, is there anything that I can do, like to help you this week. Like I know
To
that,
feel loved and
yeah.
to feel seen and valued. And as humans, sometimes we get so stuck in our own heads that we think we're doing a great job loving and supporting everyone around us. And like Emerald said, sometimes that's not the case.
Hmm.
Sometimes we are doing mean, hurtful things without realizing it. Sometimes we are the red flag. So we have to be willing to look in the mirror and be like, I made a mistake.
Yeah.
I fucked up. I'm sorry. And this is how I want to fix my behavior moving forward. You can't continue being like, I'm the red flag and I'm going to continue being like this.
Yeah, like if you're able to take accountability, make sure that you show that towards your actions as well. You can't keep telling the person, "Oh, I'm so sorry, I'll fix it next time," because that can develop more trauma for them. If you keep
Mm-hmm.
saying, "I'm so sorry, I'll fix it," because if you try and heal that wound with words but not
Actions.
continue it with your actions to fully heal it, it's not going to fully heal. It's gonna maintain the infection, if you will.
And that's so sad. We need to do better. Do better, be better. Honestly, guys, this conversation is a little bit bittersweet. I've known my friend Emmy here now for about 4 years. I mean, we haven't been super close on everything, but we have shared some trauma, some sad things that we might not have shared with everybody else. And like I said earlier, I think of her as a younger sister. So there's a big part of me that feels very prideful, but also a little bit sad that she's taking her first steps into adulthood. So if you guys are out there watching and you guys want to give advice to Emerald or someone who's brand new to this whole adulting experience, please drop in the comments and let us know. I really want to know what you guys think about because being a human is hard, but learning to be an adult is super hard as well. So let us know what you guys think. I hope you guys enjoyed this segment. I hope it wasn't too sad or too triggering for you guys. But this is just us navigating our thoughts and emotions and kind of saying goodbye to each other as well.
Yeah, yeah, it's gonna be some big boy moments. I mean, for you still, there's always gonna be things that we can learn throughout our adulthood, and then I'm having to figure out a lot of things for the first time. So, I mean, it's always helpful to give advice to each other and be able to hear each other out. Um, and I mean, in the comments, there not everybody gets to have a good parental figure or a good figure over them to give them good advice about life. I mean, I've had a few things where I'm like, I have no idea what to do because I don't have someone here with me to show me how to do these things. So it's always helpful to be able to turn to your friends and be like, "Hey, how do I do this? Please help, because
Yeah.
I don't know how to do these
And
things."
I think as humans, we need to remind ourselves like we're all living life for the very first time, and it's totally okay for people not to know what they're doing. There's so many people who expect people to know what to do, but some people were not taught certain things,
Hmm.
and uh, I even watch TikToks and stuff sometimes where I'm like, I didn't know that. Or
Yeah.
sometimes I'll read comments and someone's giving really amazing advice to a complete stranger. And I think us as humans on the internet are so cute, honestly, sometimes. The internet can be a mean, horrible place sometimes, but sometimes it is so full of love and compassion and to to spread that is so kind and so beautiful. So I hope you guys enjoyed this segment. If you guys are still hanging out with me and Emerald, don't forget to drop a like and a subscribe, and I'll see you guys later. And this is our little segment.